We have a brilliant panel coming up for you now, put together by our team at WIA UK. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with WIA UK, we are a newly formed community of the larger WIA Global. And as a UK-based community, we're focused on supporting and uplifting people of underrepresented genders within the UK animation industry. We do this by creating space for community and hosting discussions on topics that we feel are relevant for our community and the wider animation industry. So for our panel today, we'll be discussing staying nimble in a time of flux. This industry has undergone significant changes over the past year, and with it we've seen larger studios shutting down and a rise in smaller studios. This panel will reflect on the role that smaller studios play in the new commercial landscape, what it takes to start a small business, and how to remain nimble in an ever-changing industry. And I'm very excited to be joined by this wonderful panel. Let's get started. If you could guys just introduce yourselves, a little bit about your clients and your business.
Yeah, shall I go first? Okay. I'm Hayley Akins. My pronouns are she, her. I run Motion Hatch. It's an online education company where we help freelance motion designers and small studios to start and scale their businesses.
That was really good. Hi. My name's Ashley Robertson, and my pronouns are she, her as well. And I've recently just founded my own studio called Poison Ivy. So we're in the very early beginnings of it. But previous to that, I've been a motion designer for 7 years now and freelance for 4 of those years.
Hello, I'm Catherine Pitt, and I'm co-founder and creative director of Formplay. And we're a Brighton-based animation studio, and we create characters and storytelling assets for brands, essentially.
Oh, brilliant. Well, yeah, we're going to be discussing all of your businesses, what you've seen in the last couple of years, how things have changed. But at the end, we'll have time at the talk for a Q&A. So if you guys want to send in any questions, you can do that on our WhatsApp. We will have a roaming mic, which will be me running up and down, so please send them on WhatsApp, because that would be helpful. Let's get started. So it'd be great to find out why you started your own businesses and what it is that you love about running them. Hayley, did you want to go?
So I was actually a freelance motion designer before I started Motion Hatch. So I think I went freelance for all the reasons that everyone does, where they want more freedom and they want to do more creative work. And then why I started Motion Hatch was because I was frustrated that there wasn't more people discussing the business side of things. So things like how to price your work, how to get clients, all of that kind of stuff. So that's why I wanted to start my Motion Hatch business. And I started a podcast in 2017. You can still listen to it now. We've got over 100 episodes. And then we've got a YouTube channel as well. And yeah.
Brilliant. And Ashley, you've just started. So what was the decision that went into founding your own studio?
Insanity. No, I was just a bit bored as a freelancer, and I felt like I wasn't really doing the career that I wanted. I loved animation and, loved the work that I was doing, but I just wanted something a bit more. I wanted to be more in control of the whole project and actually do things start to finish rather than being just a set of skills that are brought in at the end. And I actually just wanted to kind of be the change that I wanted to see, and that there's not a lot of females that start agencies, and I wanted to change that and be one of them and try and add to the statistic and make it a little bit bigger, and try and use the agency to bring other women up as well and help try and just be a bit more positive in that space and actually do some good rather than here's all our amazing work. I'd actually wanted to just put something out there into the world that helped people.
And Catherine, how did Formplay start?
Well, I think really we started because we really wanted creative control, and we didn't really want people telling us how to spend our time. So I think really, we wanted to kind of preserve that ability to say no to things. We didn't want to be kind of cornered into doing work that we'd actually hate and, dread that Sunday night feeling. We wanted to enjoy Mondays. And I think, over time it's just become more kind of preserving our kind of, the creative direction, but also the strategic direction. We wanted to be able to mould the shape of our business fully, and not be dictated to in quite the same way as, if you were, essentially, employed, or, we wanted that freedom. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, especially in this moment where things have changed a lot and there is a sense of lack of control, it does sound like you've all kind of wanted to sort of have more direction and be in control of that direction, which, as a freelancer, sometimes you're just at the mercy of whatever's available, which is super fun, and I love that for me. You guys are great. But what is it? So, I mean, you've all come from creative backgrounds and then started businesses, and I feel like there's no sort of model for that because, obviously you can go to university and learn all about it, but you kind of stumble into these things often in these kind of moments like all of you. So was there anything that you any surprises that you found when starting your own business, that like good or bad? Was it something where you were like, oh, I didn't know that it was going to be like this, and that was great, or that was the U-turn I need to do immediately?
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the surprising things from going from freelance to starting Motion Hatch more as a company was hiring other people. Everyone struggles with this, and I did too, and I think I was really unprepared for handing off stuff and not micromanaging. And also, I didn't have all the systems and processes in place like I do now. And I think that was really difficult to start with. And I feel like I learned the hard way that you really need systems to help you in your business. And that's like what we teach at Motion Hatch. We give everyone the systems and the processes that they need to scale. Because I think when you start hiring someone and you say, oh yeah, do this for me, or do that, and you're just sort of throwing stuff at them, and you're not saying, this is how I like to do it, and then we do this, and then we do this. And obviously they learn over time, but you waste so much time doing that, and it can actually be really detrimental to your business, and that was really surprising for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, where you're just winging it for a long time, then being like, so that was 2 years where I was just figuring it out. But that's very helpful. That's very helpful. Anyone starting a business, go to Motion Hatch immediately. How about you, Ashley? Was there anything unexpected?
I am in that stage of figuring it out. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I have found is I just didn't anticipate it being this hard. Like, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't realise, like, every aspect feels like a challenge when you're just starting out. Like, even doing things like branding. I'm a motion designer, obviously. I've come into Motion Hatch and Motion North even, and having to, like, just animate how my logo looks. And I'm like, if this was a client I'd done a day, it will be fine. I'd nail it. But then when it comes to, like, animating your own stuff, you're like, oh, this is just, like, I care too much about it. And I think that's what I found surprising. It's trying to get all of your pieces of the puzzle together is a lot harder than I think studios make out to be when they're on these stages of being like, we've just done all this stuff. And I'm like, it's really fucking hard, actually, to set it up. So that's what I found surprising.
Well, yeah, I guess it's really personal as well, because you're like, there's so much pressure on it because it feels like all of you, rather than like, oh, actually, let's just fob that off.
100%. Like, the studio is my child. Like, I am a mother now to the studio, and I don't know how you cope when you're motherhood, when you're trying to put this out into the world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Catherine, what was it like for you? Were there any sort of unexpected things when you were setting up and sort of that transition from creative to business-minded?
I think for us it was very early on. I think probably just before we started Form Play, we had a design studio. And I think we just, because we hadn't, we're self-taught essentially, I think we assumed that there was a set way of doing things. And I think the biggest surprise was that realization that actually you're in control. You can actually build the studio in however a model that you want. It really needs to suit you. And I think it was that realization that you had that control, and there aren't any right or wrong ways. It's very personal, the way you build a business.
Do you feel that, like with clients, that they connect a lot with that because it is you, and you can have that sort of authentic interaction with the client because you're like, this is who we are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think once you've decided the direction that you want to take and the things that are important to you, so for us, one of them, which I'm sure we'll get onto later perhaps, but perhaps moving away from a model of just creating assets to more ownership. And I think that sort of thread alone changes the dynamics so much, and it changes the sort of clients that we maybe approach. It changes how short-term or long-term that relationship might be. So it has so many knock-on effects. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. I think it'd be good to sort of unpack a bit the sort of current state of the industry, because obviously, I mean, I'm sure you've all seen big studios that you thought were indestructible suddenly disappearing, which has been mildly terrifying. But then I've also seen lots of smaller studios appearing, lots of sort of startups and collectives doing more things, and it seems like there's a real like sort of need for that, need to be small and agile compared to like a huge, not to name any studios, but bigger studios that just can't react as quickly to environments. So how do you think, I forgot what my question is. What changes and shifts have you as like studios noticed over the past years? I mean, Hayley, you work with a lot of different people, and I imagine probably more people are coming to you more recently to kind of figure out how to develop things.
Yeah, the biggest thing that people are coming to me with at the moment is I used to rely solely on referrals, and now those referrals seem to be drying up. So how do I actually market my business and be more proactive with the business side of things? Because that's what we teach people about, like how to promote their work, how to get clients and all that kind of stuff. And I think before, a lot of people were just relying on referrals. And now, because I think COVID happened and we had a surplus of people coming into the industry, because obviously everyone could only do animation and not do video and filming. So then now we've got more studios and more freelancers and like not enough work. So I think there's slightly maybe correcting to that now, but this is what is happening, and loads of people are coming and saying, please help me to like actively market myself, because the referrals that I was relying on are just not there. And for me, I think if you are relying on referrals, it's great that you have that. But what's important is you need to know how to get your own clients and what levers in your business that you can pull, so that you're like, okay, we need some more leads. Let's go out on social media and do this type of post because we know that helps us to get clients. Let's do more speaking. Let's go on a podcast. Let's do all these different things. But if you don't know what works to get a particular type of client, then you can't do that. And I think, like, for me, everyone seems to be kind of coming around to the fact of, okay, we need to work on our marketing, our positioning, and all of those kind of things.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I am somebody who just goes back to regular clients and then goes, so I'm not working. This is tough. What do I actually do now? So trying to figure that out, which is, I think a lot of people in the audience probably relate. But actually, what is it about this sort of changing landscape that made you want to start a business? Because I think, seeing things close and pop up.
Yeah, I won't lie, it's been terrifying to see some studios that like I've looked up to and like aspired to work for just suddenly close, just as I'm starting a studio. It's terrifying, but I kind of have to go into with the blinkers on, and I know from like speaking to people and even just telling my family that I'm starting a studio, they're like, so you're going to get a studio space when you're going to hire somebody, like. I think traditionally when people start studios, the immediate aim is just to grow, and I think there's a lot of power in not growing and actually just staying as one. So like it's still me, I am the studio entirely, but where my power is going to come from is I can build teams around whatever the job needs, so I can expand, I can contract, I don't have anybody's mortgage on my conscience, those kind of things, and I think that's where like maybe the shift is, and it's staying smaller actually is more sustainable than growing to a team of like 50 and 100 people.
Yeah, that does seem, as like somebody who has not started a business, terrifying, the idea of like, oh, now you have 50 people that you have to get jobs in, compared to being like a freelancer where you're like, oh, okay, I can survive, fingers crossed. But like, I mean, Catherine, form players, like your core is you, the two of you. Have you seen, and you've been going for, how long is it now? Like
We've been going for about 8 years.
8
now,
years,
yeah.
So have you seen, what have you noticed as like over those 8 years, like any shifts, any changes?
I would say we're noticing more brands. I mean, we work mainly direct to brand in the commercial space. We've noticed more brands now taking, building motion teams in-house. And I think because we very much stay in our lane, we're very much frame animators, character animators, that we've noticed it doesn't make sense for those brands to necessarily have that level of specialization in their businesses in-house. So they are looking for that niche partnership. So for me, I think it's really leaning into that specialization and working out what makes you distinctive, where your value lies, and how you can partner with brands, how you can fill that gap that maybe they can't bring in-house in quite the same way. But I definitely have seen, more appetite for that, just looking for things for partnerships with niche creators. I think that's, it just helps you sustain longer-term relations because you can build longer, you can build assets that go from, say characters all the way through to animation over the long term. So, yeah.
Do you see a lot of like repeat clients as well because of you've built those relationships that mean that you can sort of continue with them?
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is where we go back to the license and, holding on to the IP. So, I think it's often sort of taken for granted that you might be a work for hire, but actually, if you start actually questioning that and pushing back and asking why, brands want the IP, or is it more just ease of use rather than ownership, then suddenly, you have that connection point with them. You can start building longer relations because, they keep coming back to you as the original creator, and you can work out a fair usage and a fair contract with that client. So it just changes the dynamic entirely. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really...
Yeah.
I mean, specialism, I feel like there's this moment now where lots of, I think, students are feeling like they have to generalize, like they have to really know every software, all of these things. So it's really nice to hear that actually specializing is still really relevant,
Yeah, I would actually say that more opportunities come towards us because we are specialised. I think when we started the studio, we thought we had to say yes to everything, and actually it just diluted our message. The more you specialise and you become more distinctive, then you're drawing people towards you rather than having to sell so much. So yeah, it's really important.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it'd be good to talk about as well, because I think I'm not like everything's positive about starting a small business, but I think there's sort of highs and lows, and it's a challenge, and especially when you're starting something new. I imagine, Hayley, you've been working with lots of people who are starting that new thing. Like, what do you find are the advantages and the disadvantages, or more the disadvantages, I suppose, in this kind of like, in this time when you're setting things up? Like, how do you, in this sort of climate where things are sort of chaotic, do you feel like there's a balance you need to find? Or like, I'm asking a really diluted question. What am I saying? Just, what are the advantages and disadvantages of setting up a small business like right now, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking specifically more studio as compared to a freelancer, I suppose.
Yeah, more studios and more like...
Yeah, so like, I think we've talked about it a little bit, but having staff and people that rely on you, even if it's like freelancers you work with regularly, and having, that responsibility, it does feel like a lot compared to like when I was a freelancer and I was just going into studios and agencies in London. I just had to look after myself, like you said. So I think, is that a disadvantage in a way? I don't know, you've got more people to think about, so I think that's always hard. Because in my business, I don't have any full-time staff at the moment, but I have freelancers that I work with every single week. So I still feel like responsible for them, you know, because they rely on that income and stuff like that. So I think that's always can be difficult compared to just being a freelancer. So if we're talking about that from a studio perspective. But for me, positives of Motion Hatch particularly, going from being a freelancer, when I started Motion Hatch, I thought, I can have a much bigger impact on the industry. And that was like a massive positive for me, because I really want to help people and, you know, impact them and help them get better at the business side of things. So I guess that's very niche to me, but that's kind of like an advantage for me.
Why do you think a lot of freelancers, like, kind of like you were saying, Ashley, is like, you want more? Like, there's some, I think if you've been doing this for a long time, like I've been freelancing for like 15 years, and after a certain point you're like, you feel a bit like a cog in a machine, so you kind of want to have some kind of bigger impact on the world. And I think that does attract a lot of people, but also can be, quite scary undertaking. But so far, actually, what kind of advantages and disadvantages have you felt like setting up?
I think for advantages, I actually think it's potentially maybe a bit easier to start studios now than maybe it would have been previously. And I think it is because there's definitely been that shift, like especially after COVID, with working from home, and everybody loves a Zoom nowadays for a meeting. You don't need to have an office space, actually. You just need some professional headshots. You don't need to appear as some mega studio that's got an office and a wine fridge. You can get away with being just yourself, and people will then still respect it. I think maybe before, like a lot of times people needed the big thing to portray that they were bigger than they were, but I think now people respect it, that it can just be someone sitting in their spare bedroom. They're still going to create amazing work. Like the whole working from home thing, it's proven we can do it. So I think that's a big advantage, but then the disadvantage is like the world's fucked, and you just never know. You just don't know. You can't predict it. You actually can't. You'd be like, I'm setting a studio up. I hope it's going to be really great and successful, but you just don't know, because we didn't think we were going to go into a pandemic. That happened. So yeah, that's the disadvantage of is the not knowing, I guess.
I guess so. Like it does feel like the world is in chaos right now. So why not start a studio? Why not do all of these things?
Literally, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, it truly does feel like the time is now. And yeah, like you're saying about the studio spaces, like I was once hired for 3 days to sit in a studio and look like I worked there so that my friend could get a Nickelodeon contract. So, but you don't need to do that anymore. If you're on Zoom, people just assume that you're in a studio somewhere. So that's,
Put a fake background on there. Job's a good one.
Exactly. Catherine, do you have any thoughts on advantages or disadvantages of setting something up in this kind of climate?
Yeah, I think it's almost reframing what is a successful studio. I think we're so geared up to have, this notion of, you've got to aim big, you've got to have big global names, you've got to have volume, and that's just not the case. It's far better to have a fewer really great quality clients that, like I said before, you build a longer-term relation with, and that are recurring, and that, you can build brand assets or commercial assets with them. Far better that than have lots of one-off engagements. You're always reinventing the wheel. You're spending a huge amount of energy on the sort of marketing side of the business, rather than actually developing more of a kind of long-term strategy with clients. And I think it also forces you to think about your positioning when you're small. There's no room for, there's no room to sort of get it wrong in a sense, because, you have to have clarity. You have to say exactly where your strengths lie. And yeah, I think that can only be, a huge bonus. That's something that's really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I think the clarity of who you are as an individual, a maker, but also as a business, I think if you've been, I feel like a lot of freelancers could sort of just carry on forwards, not really, you're just jumping from job to job. You haven't thought to like define what you're actually doing or why you're doing it. So it's interesting, like that's a great moment to be like, actually, who are we and how do we engage with clients that this feels very meaningful?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think, we're also witnessing lots of big changes in our industry. And how do you think that businesses and indie directors will need to adapt in the coming years? Because I think there have been a lot of changes, and I'm sure more changes down the line. But how do you think, that we'll need to adapt in that sense? I mean, you work with freelancers as well as studios, so is there any sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and what I've seen happen is with big brands, now they're hiring a lot of influencers and like creators to make things. So I think that's kind of good for small studios and freelancers because the brands are trusting more individuals. But then if I think about the future, the people who I see being really, really successful are like also building their own audiences. And I know that's quite scary to everyone because, we didn't get into animation to be content creators. But, there is some amazing people there like Emily LaRussa. I hope I'm saying her name correctly, but she's an amazing, amazing animator, and she animates stuff for brands, but then part of the deal is that she puts it on her own channels as well. And I think we'll be seeing more and more of that. So I think, thinking about, like we were talking about positioning, I think is really important because, who you are, what's your personality, what do you stand for, all of these things are going to become more and more important because that helps you to stand out. And then also, potentially, that will attract more clients. So there's other people that I know that are getting themselves out there, getting their faces more on camera, and they're seeing the benefits of that. Like someone that I worked with in one of my past courses, Max, he's putting his face on LinkedIn and going out there with a mic and people are noticing him. And he said that he got a big drinks brand client from the US just from posting one post on TikTok. So I'm seeing more and more of these stories. So I think that's kind of maybe where we're going in the future. So it's good in a way because it means brands are trusting individuals, but then it's also what else are you offering them and how are you different and how are you standing out? And I think, doing some content marketing and things like that is maybe going to happen a lot more.
Oh, that's really interesting because I think there's for a long time, I think directors were getting signed with studios because of, they had a big impact, they had a big following online. So it's nice to hear that actually the clients are coming directly to you and you kind of miss out the bigger studio if that's the kind of way you want to work and have those personal relationships with clients.
Yeah.
But also getting your face out there is horrible.
Yeah, it's hard. Max's business is called Peel Animation. I just remembered, so if anyone wants to check him out, I just thought I'd give him a shout out.
See what he's doing.
Yeah, he's doing a really good job. So, but it's scary. And you don't always have to put your face out there on camera. You can do it in your own way. But like Catherine was saying, this is where the positioning side of things come in. How do you want to position yourself? How do you want to market yourself? And, what is your kind of unique angle? And I feel like that attracts clients and brands as well.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Ashley, what do you think? How do you think we'll be needing to adapt in this coming years?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what you were saying, Hayley. I do think brands are caring more about the people side of it rather than just the reputation side. And I think, what you were saying, putting yourself out there can actually go a lot further, and maybe that would be a reason why a client would choose you over somebody else because they know you, and people hire people. So if you're putting yourself out there and your personality and you can get a bit of a following from that, I think is really useful. I did that definitely through freelancing because it was just me and I needed people to hire me. And I've just kind of brought that on through starting Poison Ivy as well. On my Instagram, I'm just filming random videos of me trying to figure out what I'm doing. And when I was speaking about doing that, people were like, but do you want to tell people that you don't know what you're doing? And I'm like, yeah, because they might not trust in me because I don't have all these huge clients behind me, but they'll trust me. and that's like kind of all I've got like to go on just now. And I think like that is going to be, hopefully, touch wood, be like a really strong positioning where like I can get clients just through being me. Am I an influencer?
I like that a lot. And Catherine, what do you think? Is there any ways that we'll need to adapt in the coming years, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I'm just extending really what I was saying earlier, that I feel like if we're having these sorts of conversations about us and our industry, brands are going through the same thing. And I think everything's becoming fragmented. You know, there are AIs creating obviously more opportunities in many ways. You're getting far more startups, far more individual businesses, far more opportunities for people to start new businesses. And they're all going to need to stand out. They're going to need something unique, and they're going to need the creative industry. They're going to need our unique perspective. So I think there's a huge opportunity potentially. There's so many. I could make a huge case against AI. I'm certainly not bigging it up. I'm just trying to say, as a reality, maybe I'm trying to be stubbornly optimistic that, you know, the thing that makes us all unique is our superpower, you know, and I think we've really got to lean into that and remember it. So I think just doubling down on what makes us all, you know, unique and distinct. And yeah, I think just really leaning into that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the uniqueness is what makes us interesting, quite frankly. Now, I'm just going to jump to some audience questions because we've got some in the WhatsApp. First question, who would your... Oh, no. That was from earlier. First question, has owning a studio given you financial stability and freedom? Panicked look in your eyes.
Well, I was just thinking it from Motion Hatch isn't really a studio more than anything. But yeah, I'm running a small business. Has it given me freedom? Yes, definitely. Because, I mean, what's fun about what I do is I do lots of different things every day and, you know, make YouTube videos and podcasts and coach motion designers and studios. And I like that variety. So I think that's really, really important. And also building up the business to work with other people too, so you can go on holiday and it still runs without you, like to a certain extent, you know, let's all be realistic about it, but, you know, I'm responsible. But if you have other people that work for you, it is nice that you feel like, oh, if I go away when I'm a freelancer, then my business just completely stops. Whereas if I go away on holiday now, Motion Hatch doesn't completely stop, so that's nice, you know.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it keeps going. It's fun, and everyone still gets help, and it's great. So, you know, that's really good. So I love that, and I love having the freedom of getting up every day and do something different and fun and chatting to people. It's really great.
Oh, that's really nice. I mean, I suppose actually you're quite new, so the stability is maybe coming in the future.
Yeah, I have no money and no stability. Yeah, that's a question for maybe a year down the line. And definitely from speaking to people, they've said, don't do it if you want to make more money, because you won't. So I'm at peace with that. And yeah, as for the freedom, that's kind of like where I was feeling the bit of a disconnect with being a freelancer, and kind of like you've just said, Hayley, like it would be nice to just be able to go away and have business not stop. And I think even with like me being, it's my studio and it's still just me as technically the only employee, if I've got freelancers that I can pull in, I know I can trust, like then they can take on the project. And if I want to go on holiday, I can.
Oh, lovely. And Catherine?
I would say for us, certainly, I wouldn't, excuse me, We've really shifted, I say, over the last 2 to 3 years to, I know I keep banging on about licensing, but the great thing about it is that as you progress in your careers, as your studios grow, you keep creating assets, you keep creating things that have value. And, you know, you might create something, you might charge a fee for that creation, but you also charge a license fee. And when the usage for that license fee has expired, you can then either relicense that piece of artwork to somebody else because you own it, or you get, you know, a renewal of the license. So it's certainly not a fix-all thing, and it doesn't suit all clients. But it's just something I think everyone should start thinking about and talking about a lot more, because you start building this kind of flywheel, and it's not a huge amount of money always, but you just get little incremental cash flow coming into your business, which obviously is really important. So it's a super dry subject, but I think it's really worth getting to grips with, because it's liberating. It empowers you as a business, and it gives you a real financial cushion if you keep doing it, because obviously you're just constantly creating. So rather than giving away the things that you're creating, you're keeping them for yourselves, for your future selves, which is really important.
I mean, I do love the idea of making something once and then continuing to get money for it indefinitely. That is the dream.
Yeah, just on that, I think the illustration industry has been doing this for a long time, and I don't know why animation is like why we haven't been doing it, because as motion designers and animators, often we are like designing as well. So if we make a character and then you're, giving that to the brand and giving them all the copyright and everything, then they can go and do essentially whatever they want maybe with that character and do something else. And it's important, like you said, to say you can use it for this, like only on your website or only on social media and just for a year, or all these things. So yeah, I just wanted to back up your point, Catherine, because it's very, very true.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
we've also got another question. When you think of a successful studio, what qualities or outcomes matter most to you, and why?
When you think of a successful studio, what qualities or outcomes?
I think it's earlier when Catherine was it might be off the back of you saying we need to redefine what it means to be a successful studio. I think because sometimes it's unless I get a Netflix deal, I am not a success.
Yeah, okay, I understand your question now. Yeah, I think for me, it's what does success sort of mean to you? I think, like Ashley was saying earlier as well, having these big studios with big spaces and things like that, I think that isn't necessarily success. It just means you have so much more overhead. And I feel obviously Motion Hatch is an online business, so it came out of that kind of online business era, and then after COVID, a lot more people were going remote. So I remember when I first started Motion Hatch and it was a remote company, that was kind of weird, everyone's like, what, it's all just online? And you're like, yep, everything's online. But it's really nice because it means it's flexible and that we don't have to be in an office and we can go, anywhere in the world and we can still be working on the business and stuff like that. So for me, I like having that freedom, and I think that's part of what success means to me anyway.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually,
Yeah, I think it is just everybody's definition of success is definitely different. And kind of what you were saying about the big clients, I'd love to work with Netflix, but I don't think that determines my success of the studio. When I feel my studio's a success, it'll be if I know that I'm good to work with, client and freelancer. That's my North Star. I just want to be a nice person to work with. I want to be able to pay people on time. I'd as freelancers, how many times have we maybe had a little bit of a rant about a studio and everybody's oh yeah, that studio is really difficult to work with. I don't want to be that. I want to be that's an amazing studio to work with. I want to work with them. And I think that's when I'll feel like a success, when I'm actually doing good and making people's lives better as well.
nice.
I feel like excuse me, a sustainable business really is something that we're always looking for. And I don't just mean financially sustainable. I mean from a kind of soul point of view. You don't want to hate Monday mornings. So really, if you can make money and you're comfortable and you love what you do, then that's a huge success in my book. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that is a huge success. I think we're all looking for that. We have run out of time now, but you guys are going to be at the festival for this afternoon. So if you want to ask any more questions, please, I'm putting now in a really awkward position, please come up to these ladies and ask them lots of questions. But thank you so much to you guys, the audience, and thank you so much to our wonderful panel.